It's time for the All right, what's going on? 3 o'clock chat here. NBA playoffs tonight. A triple header that starts at 4 on TNT. The Magic will be in Boston to meet the Celtics. Boston favored by 10.5. No Jason Tatum as he deals with a bruise in his wrist. At 4:30 on NBA TV, the Heat are in Cleveland to meet the Cavaliers. Cleveland took game one. They're favored by 12.5. And then the nightcapper, a good one. 6:30 tip in Houston, the Warriors and Rockets. Golden State took game one. Rockets favored by 3.5 in game number 2. The Rip City Drive with Chad Doing is coming up next. Sean Hyken will be in studio in the 4 o'clock hour. We have a pair of Thorns tickets to give away and a very special guest at 5:20.
It's time for the Rip City Drive, brought to you by Goldberg Jones. Divorce for Men. Call 1-800-DIVORCE. Featuring the crazy and often irrational longtime Portland radio vet, Chad Doing.
I'm really just going in with intentions to be out there with the team, and I'm going to give everything that I got. I just build from there. Pride and heart and care, you got to go out there and just do what you got to do, and you got to deal with the results, and you just got to find a baseline to build from, and that's what I'm going to do.
Lillard, a long bomb. Got it! Damian Lillard from 30 feet out has pulled Milwaukee back to within 2. Better late than never.
Bobs it in deep to Holmgren. Backing down Aldama. Spins, comes left deep baseline, and lofts home a 3-foot hook. Chet Holmgren putting on some finishing touches as 16. Finds Holmgren open. His left wing three is online. Cha-ching a Thunder money ball. It's 9-0. Thunder pitching a shutout. Back-to-back splashes from distance. They had 17 threes in game 1. OKC Thunder playoff basketball downtown Oklahoma City. There's nothing like it. And the number 1 seed Thunder take command in this series by going up 2 victories to none, emphatically roughing up the Grizzlies again. 118-99, the game 2 final. A 51-point win in game 1 gives way to a 19-point shellacking of the 8th seeded Grizz in game 2.
Season low, 85 points for Minnesota. Lakers are going to win it by 9 and tie this best-of-7 series at 1-1.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Chad Doing starts now.
Man, I'm so ticked off right now. So last night, I thought I was getting over on life. For the record, I now officially despise Willie Nelson and Bob Dylan. I'm trying to go to Los Angeles to take in a Dodgers series and get a Vin Scully bobblehead and maybe catch a day at Disneyland. And so I was looking at hotel prices. I love using Hotels.com. It just works for me. And you can, get points and some cash to use on future stays or whatever. So it's just simple to go to the app and Hotels.com. And I started searching in the downtown area. What I like to do, or the way I operate when I travel, is I like to walk and get some movement in. Well, if you stay in downtown, I Uber up to the Dodger games. And then when you leave the stadium, trying to get a ride share out of there is a disaster because you got like 1 billion people trying to get a ride share. And I'm not one of those people that likes to wait in line. That's why the mobile app at Starbucks is so genius. You put in the order, you drive down the hill, you pull up, you walk in, you get your beverage, and you're out of there. But before the mobile app, you would walk in sometimes in the morning, and the line was out to the door. I needed caffeine, and I was about to go on a rage because I didn't have caffeine. But the anxiety from waiting in line and knowing you got to be somewhere, I can't do it. So the mobile app, it solved everything. Well, when I see a long line of drunken morons waiting to get their ride share, I'm out, man. I'm not going to do it. So what I do is I Uber up to the game, and after the baseball game, I just walk back to the hotel. It's like 2 miles. It takes about 35 minutes to get back into downtown, and I find the walk to be quite enjoyable. I like the movement. I like the fresh air. The weather down there, of course, is always nice for the most part, so I enjoy that process. Well, I've been searching for hotels for this particular period that I'm going to go down there, and I couldn't believe it, but the pricing on the hotels where I normally stay, like 3 times the price. I'm like, what the flip is going on? You ever done that where you look at something and you like double barrel the screen because you're like, I can't believe what I'm reading right now? And so I've been gripping about that because I've got certain areas where I want to stay, and I'm not going to go low budget and stay in a motel with like crack dealers and hookers. Like I have no desire to do that. So finally last night, before I went to bed, I thought, you know what, I'll give it one more look. And all of a sudden, one of the hotels I love with a 9.0 rating popped up, and they had the proper price for the nights I'm going to be down there, at just under $200 a night. I'm like, yeah, I'm on it. So I booked my reservation, and I thought, dude, I'm getting over. I finally won. I was patient. I picked my spot, and then boom, I executed and jumped on it immediately. Well, right before I went to my workout this morning with my buddy Luke, I got a notification in my email. It says, your reservation has been canceled. I'm like, wait, what? They canceled my reservation and refunded me immediately. And I think what happened is it was one of those computer glitches where I got the price at the right price. They realized this morning what happened. And they're like, wait a second, we're not going to give him that room for those nights when we get triple the price. So they canceled it. And then when I went back in to rebook, the price had doubled. So, of course, double barrel. And I'm like, dang it. So I don't know what I'm going to do. But it's irritating to see that kind of stuff. Dynamic pricing is a bunch of bull bleep is what it is. Like you ever, like when you're on the app trying to get a flight somewhere, it's so bizarre. Like you are trying to book a flight like 2 weeks out before you get inside that 2 week window where things get ridiculous, or the 1 week or whatever it is. And you look at the prices, they shift day and night. One day they're this, one day they're that. And then you get inside of a week and they just all go high. Why is that? Well, what difference does it make if I book it 1 week out or 2 weeks out? What do you care? But no, we're just going to jack up the price. Morons. That stuff drives me crazy. Dynamic pricing is another way of saying we're about to screw you. Dynamic pricing is crazy. And it's like those things where, like with Ticketmaster and stuff, where it says convenience fee. That's translated as we're going to take advantage of you. So you might as well just bend over and take it. That's really what's going on there. So I don't like any of that process, so I'm really bitter about that. Man, I thought I got over. I did get over, but they canceled it. They just flat out canceled it. It's like, no, we had an agreement. And they shut me down. So there you go. That's how that went down. So I'm searching and looking, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Now, good news. I mentioned yesterday that I was going to go and try to discover a mattress. I think I found the one. And, of course, I'm going to have to pay more than what I wanted to pay. And I'm getting a great deal, but I think there are certain things in life that you get what you pay for. And most of my life, up until about the last year, I never had to worry about where I slept. I could lie on the floor, I could lie on the mattress, I could lie on the couch, whatever, it didn't matter. And then all of a sudden you get a mattress when you're 49 years old that's not quite firm enough. And then all of a sudden you got back issues. So I'm just going to have to lay down the scratch and get the mattress. But the dude offered me a floor model at a significant reduction. And so I'm going to do it. And it's amazing. I laid down on several like medium firm mattresses and I could feel an instant difference. And I was so bitter that I have to buy a mattress. I went home last night like, no, maybe it's all in my head. So I laid the mattress, the adjustable base down flat, and I slept that way. And I woke up. I was like, no, it's the mattress. It's not that the mattress is bad. It's just not firm enough. And the guy was showing me last night. I was lying down on different mattresses, and he was telling me when I was aligned, when I wasn't aligned. It's all about the proper alignment or something like that. So there you go. My Nana was awesome. I love my Nana, and I wish she was still here with us. But she would send me, raise your hand if you had a grandmother who would send you paper clippings and different things in the mail along with a handwritten letter. And I saved all of her letters that I still have, and she had beautiful handwriting. But she would clip out stuff from like magazines and the newspaper and all these different things, the church bulletin. And I would get these different things from her. But she sent me this one story from Consumer Reports, and it was talking about generic brand. Basically when you need to buy top line and spend the money and when you don't. And there are a variety of different things where you don't need the name brand and you can get by. Like I think batteries was one of the big thing. Like a lot of the generic batteries, they last just as long as, the top of the line stuff like Duracell or Everready or whatever the top batteries are. So I do believe that there are certain things that you don't need to spend top dollar on. But when it comes to certain things like your sleep, and of course, everyone's telling me, well, I've heard, you spend like a third of your life on a mattress. I know. Shoes, don't want to go cheap on shoes because your feet are important. Your back is important. So there you have it. You just can't. I want to go cheap, but if you go cheap, you're going to pay the price. And I can't do it now. And that's just part of getting older, too, right? You get older, and all these things that you didn't think about when you were younger, or you used to think the old people that would tell you about these things, you thought they were crazy. But now it all comes to fruition. You're like, they were right about this, this, and this. Like my grandpa Bill used to always warn me about the decibels, noise at a loud level, like with headphones. So he's got me all paranoid now because I wear headphones or earbuds all day long. So anyways, that's where I'm at on that. So we'll probably execute the mattress deal tonight. But I'm loving this weather. It's a beautiful day. Coming up on the show, a couple different things going on. I've got a special guest coming up at 5:20. I don't want to let you know what it's about because it's special. But I think you'll enjoy the conversation. That's at 5:20. And then my man Sean Hyken, our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report, is going to jump in studio at 4, and we'll talk NBA playoffs. Now, if you want to reach out to me, feel free. 503-248-0620. No charge for the phone call. Just call up and share your thoughts with me, and we can have healthy conversation, a nice discourse among sports fans. Whatever's on your mind, fire away. You can also reach out to me on social media at Chad and Rip City. And then today, I have another pair of tickets for the Portland Thorns that we'll give away. All you have to do is listen to me for your chance to win, and then boom, it's all good. You're going to be dialed in. Now, the playoff games tonight, I love the playoff basketball last night. Like the intensity level that I saw in that Minnesota-LA game, like give me some more of that, and we're going to get it tonight with the Rockets and Warriors. Starts out with the Magic and Celtics at 4, Heat and Cavs. Don't really care about those two games, but I will watch. And then the Warriors and Rockets, which is money. I thought the Lakers bounced back really well last night. Defense was much better. Attention to detail was much better. And what Brad Botkin told us was true. The role players that were swishing threes in game 1 for Minnesota were not doing the same in game 2. And so that kind of balanced itself out. But I thought the Lakers' effort in terms of their focus, their intensity, their defense, much better. And now that series is all tied up at 1 going back to Minnesota. What a great series. I couldn't believe the way that the officials were letting those guys play last night. The physical contact, the aggressiveness. It was playoff basketball in full force, which is great. I thought LeBron was late drama at the end of the game. I love that play where Julius Randle drove at the rim, went up for a shot, and when he came down with his offhand, he hit LeBron in the shoulder, and LeBron went down like a ton of bricks, holding his face like somehow he had been sniped. It was perfect late drama, but the Lakers get the win. And now that series is all tied up at 1, and I hope the Rockets can even things up tonight with the Warriors. I would expect them to do so. Also, I watched the first 2 episodes of the 3 that were dropped last night of Andor. That did not suck. Let me just put it that way. All right, we'll come back. I got to get into Nico Harrison. We got some Charles Barkley audio providing some healthy advice, and then we'll talk some playoffs. I hope you're enjoying your day. Wednesday, you got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing on your home of the Portland Trailblazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Mrs. Robinson. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Such a great song. Paul Simon's awesome. Simon and Garfunkel. All right, here is a couple of text messages that just came in. Tony in Portland. And Tony, or I should say Tony, I'm boring now. I'm sorry I did not text you back last night. I fell asleep. I was supposed to hit him back after I watched the Bucks and Pacers. Well, I did watch the game. I have to DVR certain games because I'm here at work, and then I got to get through traffic to get back to Vancouver. And so I did watch the game. He reached out and said, well, I'm not sure you know the outcome. I just wanted to state that it was blatantly obvious Lillard's lack of defense resulting in constant switching because he couldn't guard anybody cost him in the game down the stretch despite his big three and great assist. Love Dame, and I was pulling for him and the Bucks to win. I'm with you 100%. His defense was not good. He was working himself back into playing condition after being out with the deep vein thrombosis. And defensively, he was a liability last night. There's no question about it. Got another message that came in. Once again, Sean and Sandy taking things way too serious. This is incredible. Take a listen to this message from Sean in regard to my opening segment. You'll be okay. Please try and be understanding of things. It's not good to bring your small problems and bitterness to work and let it ruin your show. I tell employees that they are not permitted to bring that energy into the workplace and will send them home for doing so. Is he suggesting I need to be sent home? I had a guy say at work, we talk about work. Try and be positive, brother. And remember that we all have problems, but some people have real problems. Be thankful, and you are doing well. Thank you, Sean. I really appreciate the encouragement. One, I am the only one in the building right now. Shacker is off-site, and I'm literally all alone. There's not a single soul around me, so I'm not bringing anybody else down. You have to understand something that I work on radio every day. I am a talk show host. I am also all by myself. I am a solo talk show host. My job is very simple: to communicate with all of you each and every day, to share my opinions on things that I see in the world, in the sports world, and also to share my life. And so in doing so, what I've learned over the course of time, and again, I'm not the best at this, but I've been doing it for over 20 years. I try to be the person on air that I am off air. I try to present the show in a way that the hosts that I respect do so. And what I appreciate more than anything are people who are real. Just be real. Or as the Godfather Dwight James used to tell me, whatever you are, figure that out and be that. Just don't be a phony. Because why? No one likes a phony. So that means that each and every day, my emotions and my feelings and the things I'm thinking about are different than the day before. And if I experience a bit of frustration, like I experienced with Hotels.com when they canceled my reservation because I got a great deal, I'm going to share that. If I'm not sleeping well and I want to share that in the process of finding a new mattress, I will do that. Or anything else that I find in life. That's my job, is just to share my life. And yes, some people may like the stories. Some people may not like the stories. I'm not going to make people happy every day. It is what it is. But that's my job, is to share my life and to be honest in the process. I'm not going to come on and be fake happy. Some days I'm happy and I just ride with it. Some days I'm bitter and I will express that. Some days I'm somewhere in the middle. But I just try to be real. And what I've learned is I just let my emotions, I don't let them control me. But if I'm feeling a certain way, I don't try to reverse that. I just go with it, right? If there's days where you're excited and happy, let it out. If there's days where you're irritated about something, discuss it. You know, just be real. It's like that barista that I see occasionally in the morning, like early morning at about 5:30. The chipper bluebird barista that's way too happy and talkative at 5:30. When I see people that put on the happy face and smile and the weird chatter all day long, I know it's weird because it's not real. As humans, we're not happy 100% of the time each and every day. It's not even possible. Life is, you experience a wide variety of emotions. And yes, we all have different issues that we deal with. Some issues I don't have to deal with, but some I do. I mean, we can all relate on some level because we all have different obstacles that we have to overcome. So there you go. So, Sean, you're my guy. You know I love you, my man. But sometimes you take things way too seriously. All right, I want to talk about this because it's awesome. Nico Harrison, the general manager for the Mavericks, he's a dum-dum. He traded Luka Doncic to the Lakers, and the fans revolted. He traded Luka to the Lakers in exchange for a broke-down Anthony Davis and one future first-round pick. It doesn't matter who you talk to. Everybody was miffed at the deal, meaning no one thought it was real. They thought Shams had been hacked, that somehow, some way, someone had been hacked, and there's no way that anyone in their right mind would do that. Because you don't trade a global superstar who's one of the top 3 basketball players in the world to the Lakers and only get one future first in return when you have an aging core. Why? Because you have no way to rebuild your franchise moving forward. By all accounts, it was a horrific trade, and it will go down as the worst trade in the history of sport. It was really bad. Now, I don't know who ultimately is responsible. Was Nico Harrison convinced that he needed to trade Luka? Did he feel slighted by Luka? Did it become personal for Nico and he wanted to trade Luka, so he did whatever he could in communication with Patrick DeMont and the ownership group to make it happen? Or was it strictly an ownership decision where they didn't want to pay Luka the supermax? They didn't like his lack of conditioning, so they went to Nico and said, we're making the move. I don't know which was which, but whoever made the decision, it was awful. Now, if you listen to Nico, he sure makes it sound like it was his idea. Now, if I was involved on any level in Luka being traded, I would distance myself immediately. I had nothing to do with it. Wasn't my decision. Didn't want to encourage it. Not really sure how that went down. I have no knowledge of anything. Unfortunately, if you're a general manager, sometimes your owner comes to you and says, you need to do this. And then you got to go out there and take bullets for your owners because they told you to do it. Your job as a general manager is not to make a move that your owners demanded and then go in front of the press and say, look, man, I know it's a bad trade, but that's what they wanted to do. There's nothing I could do about it. They told me to trade Luka. I tried to tell them not to, but they did it anyways. Like, no general manager is going to do that because they're making a big scratch, and part of the job is to take bullets for your ownership group. Just like Roger Goodell or Skeletor, the guy that runs the NBA, those guys work for the owners, and their job is to make more money for their owners and to do what they're told to do. And sometimes that means you got to take bullets for the owners. That's just how it works. That's the process. So I don't know who convinced who that it was a good idea, but the more that Nico Harrison talks, the worse that this all gets. And I've learned in life, mostly from my dad, that you don't need to really talk that much. In fact, a lot of times, or most of the time in life, it's good just to keep your mouth shut, especially when emotion is high. I have learned that when I open my mouth, especially when emotion is high, bad things just come out. You say something you don't mean, you hurt people's feelings, you create a disturbance, a fight, or whatever the case may be. No need to speak. And when you trade Luka, we already know it's a bad idea and a horrific trade. You probably don't want to continue to talk about it and try to justify it when we all know it was just a horrific decision. Period. Stop talking, right? Well, this is what he had to say yesterday. And every time I hear it, I still can't believe that he said this. This is reprehensible as a general manager of an NBA team or any sports team, because he didn't know what we all know. And how could he not know that about his team when we all know this about his team? And the fact that he admitted this is just, it's unconscionable. But take a listen to this. He was asked whether or not he was surprised by the fan reaction when he traded Luka.
I did know that Luka was important to the fan base. I didn't quite know it to what level. But really, the way we looked at it is, if you're putting a team on the floor that's Kyrie, Clay, PJ, Anthony Davis, and Lively, we feel that's a championship caliber team, and we would have been winning at a high level, and that would have quieted some of the outrage. And so unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. So it just continued to, go on and on.
how can he not know the importance of Luka Doncic to his fan base? How out of touch can a person be? Can you imagine Pat Riley trading Dwayne Wade in his prime and then coming out and saying, man, I really didn't understand the connection between Wade and the fan base here in Miami? Or Jeannie Buss at some point saying, well, we traded Kobe, but I really didn't understand the connection between the Lakers fans, Laker Nation, and the Black Mamba. I didn't see it. I mean, I knew he was popular, but I didn't know he was loved that much. It's like, are you kidding me? Yeah, we all know. And as I talked about with people yesterday, Joe Cronin had a very clear understanding of how popular Damian Lillard was here in Rip City. So he knew the process and how difficult it was going to be to move the franchise in a different direction. He was well aware, just like anybody else would be too in that position, except for Nico Harrison. Unbelievable. Are you kidding me? So it's probably best just to shut your trap. You know, sometimes you just need to shut up. No need to talk anymore. You made the decision. It was an awful one. Just take the L and move on. And how he's still employed, I have no idea. But my guess is this Patrick Dumont guy sounds like a dum-dum too, like even maybe a little bit worse than Nico, which is amazing to me because he's worth like a lot of money. And I'm still amazed at how some of these people get into these positions and yet appear to be clueless. It's like, how did you make all that money? And how can you be this clueless about the entire area, you buffoon? So it sounds like to me, Nico decided he wanted to deal Luka and got Dum-Dum Demont on board with it. And my guess is Nico's not going to last much longer because Demont is going to get tired. Usually a powerful guy with a lot of money, he's going to get tired of people just bashing him all the time and being like enemy number one in the Dallas area. And he's going to fire Nico for talking him into such nonsense. But again, the owner should have known. It's like, wait a second, we're not trading Luka. Are you kidding me? Are you insane? I should fire you right now for suggesting such a thing. Why would we do that? And do you even understand the fallout that we would have from such an activity? I mean, that's really the reality of it, right? No, we're not trading. We're not doing that. Same thing with Pat Bowlen. Rest in peace. The longtime owner of the Denver Broncos. I love Pat Bowlen because, like Paul Allen, he just wanted to win and was willing to spend whatever it took to make it happen. Well, Dan Reeves didn't like John Elway because the two of them, over the course of time, they had a toxic relationship. Dan Reeves was trying to trade John Elway. Well, when Pat Bowlen got wind of that, he was like, we're not trading Elway. I'm sorry. He's a franchise quarterback. He's a super stud. Are you insane? He fired Dan Reeves and got a new coach. And that's the way you should handle that. Wait a second. What? You want to trade Luka? You're fired. Seriously. Like, you just know we're not doing it. It doesn't make any sense. Not only is the fan base going to revolt and we're going to lose money, but we're going to be a worse basketball team. And the fact that you want to do it without getting draft picks in return, are you crazy? I mean, seriously. So anyways, Nico keeps talking, and the more he talks, the more you realize how dumb he is. I don't know if he realizes the type of mistake he made, but just be quiet, man. It's okay to just take the L. Just shut the pie hole. Here's Charles Barkley commenting on Nico's comments that he had no idea the importance of relationship between Luka and the fan base.
Is that my camera right there?
Okay, uh-oh.
And, of course, that's Charles on the set of, TNT. And, like a real TV person will look directly into the camera for the one shot when they got to deliver an important message. That's why I love Charles doing what he does.
Is that my camera right there?
Okay, uh-oh.
Listen, man, I consider you a friend of mine, Nico Harrison. I consider you a friend of mine. I wish you nothing but the best. I thought you did a good job last year with the Mavs, and obviously whatever happened this year didn't work out. Man, don't do no more press conferences. Like, I don't even know what you're doing. I really don't. Like, I got sympathy and love for you, but I have zero idea what you're trying to do. This war is over, brother. You taking the L. I hope you keep your job. I hope that team get healthy. But, man, don't do any more interviews. Please don't.
Yeah, it's very simple. Just shut up, man. Stop talking. Stop talking. Oh, my goodness. I still can't believe that he did that. Man, Luka looked pretty good last night, didn't he? I just thought when they made the move that something really awful was going to come out about Luka. Like something really like Ime Udoka-like, right? Something that was just over the line, like you had to make a move. But no, that's not the case. They just don't like him smoking hookah, whatever that is, and then him, enjoying beer and not being as interested in conditioning as a guy like LeBron. I mean, it doesn't matter that his lack of conditioning carried your asses all the way to the finals last year. And that's what's funny, too, about some of these, executives. They think they're all high and mighty and genius, but they forget, like, oh, yeah, I have Michael Jordan. Or I've got Luka Doncic. Or I have Kobe Bryant. You look real smart when you got the great player playing for you, but let's be real here. Let's not forget who does what, right? Like Luka Doncic is a super stud. He makes a lot of people look really smart because he knows how to play basketball at a high level. Quarterbacks can make coaches look really smart. You give me Joe Montana and Steve Young, I'll have the nickname genius dropped on me too. What was Mike Shanahan's name? The Mastermind. He didn't get genius title like Bill Walsh, but he was nicknamed the Mastermind. Mike Shanahan. I don't doubt that Mike Shanahan's a great, great coach and had a great influence on the game. Just look at how many coaches right now are running his offense, right? Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan. Like, his tree is pretty big. But he also had John Elway. Won back-to-back Super Bowls. Andy Reid, the offensive guru, the Kool-Aid man, genius, right? Well, he's got Patrick Mahomes. You just don't want to forget who you got. And Nico, I think you make a couple of good moves. You add a couple of ancillary pieces. It helps you get to the finals. But the guy that got you there, the train, his name's Luka Doncic. Can you imagine running the Lakers? Who's the guy that runs the Lakers? Rob Lowe or whatever his name is. Can you imagine being the Lakers and you get a phone call and Nico's like, hey, would you be interested in Luka? Like, it's like, I don't even know how you keep a straight face, how you stay calm, how you don't be like, I'm surprised that the Lakers weren't like, dude, are you sure you want to do this? Like, what are you doing? So I don't know. I would have thought counsel maybe, right? Like usually what I do if I'm getting ready to make a big decision, I'm dumb and I recognize my stupidity on many levels. I like to run it by people I respect, like my buddy Luke or my boy Steve or my father, like people that have been proven over the course of time to make good decisions, wise individuals, smart people. I like to run things by them because I know that my track record suggests high emotion, lack of consideration, and stupidity. So I run it by people that I know are better than me. So they'd be like, dude, what are you doing? Like with Nico, like you run that by any of your boys? Hey, I was thinking about, hey guys, what do you think about this? Off the record. I'm thinking about trading Luka to the Lakers for AD and a first-round pick. Your boys would clown you for being a buffoon. You run that by your spouse, and they'd be like, wait, what? Why would you do that? Are you kidding me? All right, there you have it. All right, we'll come back. I want to hear from James Harden. Hope you're having a great day. 503-248-0620. I'll get to your phone calls. And I've got a pair of tickets for the Portland Thorns to give away. Hope you're enjoying this beautiful weather, too. It's fabulous. 70s today. It's going to be great again tomorrow. I'm loving it. You got the Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. I love this song. But out of respect to all of you, I'm not going to sing it right now. I do not have Peter Beckett's voice. And Shacker's trying to tempt me. He likes to play songs that he knows I want to sing to. All right, one of the smartest guys I know, David Michaelis, has chimed in regard to the Mavericks and Lakers trade and Luka Doncic. He says, and I told him to call the show. I'm like, dude, you're smart. Call the show. Let's talk about it. He's like, oh, I can't. I'm going into a meeting. You're too smart to waste your time in some dumb meeting. Everyone's always going into a meeting. You ever notice that? And most of the meetings I'm in at work are a waste of time. No disrespect to any of my bosses, of course. But how many of you out there actually go into a meeting and think, man, that was really worth my time? Why? So you can wait an hour for them to open it up to questions, and then somebody has to break the seal, and that creates another 30-minute gap in your lifetime? There's nothing worse than that. Any questions? All the smart people don't do a darn thing, and then one person has to open up their hole and start asking a question. And then that encourages other people who are on the verge of asking a question to ask a question. Come on, David. Your time is better spent talking to me, not in some meeting. You're too smart. All right, so he says, hindsight is always 20/20. I told him, I said, you don't need hindsight to know that trading Luka for AD and a first-round pick is a bad idea. And David said, well, something is still missing. And I said, if Nico called you prior, you would have been like, dude, what are you, insane? And I told him, call the show now and let's discuss. And that's when he told me he was going to a meeting. He said, all I could think of is it had nothing to do with Luka and more about Anthony Davis in the owner's eyes. He said, I agree with you on all of it, by the way. I just think fans get outraged way too easily. I am guessing that these general managers just want to take a risk. Well, he accomplished that mission. If you trade Luka for AD and one future first, that's a risk. Now, in regard to fans getting outraged, as I've told you, I'm not here to tell fans. I am a fan. I do get outraged. I'm sure Sean and Sandy doesn't like that because I bring that type of energy into the workplace. But yeah, I get outraged. I'm a fan too. But there are times where being outraged is justified. Like if you're a Dallas Mavericks fan and a season ticket holder and you love the team and you go to the games and they trade away the franchise for no particular reason other than he likes hookah and he's got a fupa, then I'm going to be outraged on that. Wait, what? You traded Luka? Are you kidding me? Yeah, I would be frustrated. Just like if the Broncos would have traded Elway back in the day, I'm out. I would be done right there. Well, you don't trade number 7. I don't care who you are. What are you doing? He's our best player. We're not trading number 7. And in this case, number 77. It's crazy. Absolutely insane. I don't understand. And then he said, if Kyrie and Anthony weren't injured after the trade, would we be having a different conversation? Well, of course we would. But the problem is AD is always out. That's the whole point. They talked about Luka's conditioning, and they were concerned about his future availability, and they traded him for a guy that's aging at the end of his career and is always out. That doesn't make sense. Now, if they would have gotten like 5 or 6 future first-round picks, then I could stomach the whole matter because it's like, well, they didn't want Luka, which is crazy, but they did get a bunch of capital in return to make that happen. Like if Sam Presti's trading Luka, he's getting like 50 first-round picks in return. That's how that's going to go down. So, I don't know. I just think it's one of the craziest things I've ever said. He said this. Were you surprised at the fans' reaction?
I did know that Luka was important to the fan base. I didn't quite know it to what level, but really the way we looked at it is, you know, if you're putting a team on the floor that's Kyrie, Clay, PJ, Anthony Davis, and Lively, we feel that's a championship caliber team, and we would have been winning at a high level, and that would have quieted some of the outrage. And so unfortunately we weren't able to do that, so it just continued to, go on and on.
All right, there you go. There you have it. Tony and Boring says, I believe it was Rat Shanahan. And that's true. I saw someone had made a, going back to the Jim Rome Rat family. Someone I saw floating around a couple of days ago, I sent it to the Godfather because he thinks the Rat family's funny too. You know, human beings that have I mean, if you look at them, like when I look at Mike Shanahan, and I love Shanahan, he back-to-back Super Bowls, I'll love him forever. But if you do look at certain people like Mike Shanahan and you picture him with like whiskers, you can see the rodent tendencies. And I mean that with the greatest amount of respect, of course. But someone made a Topps baseball card with Corey Pavin with a golf club in his hand. And Corey Pavin's on the list. There are many. But I would say Mike Shanahan is probably number one in my mind of all the rats. But I love Coach Shanahan. I love him. And he got the nickname Mastermind. But again, back to my example, he was a mastermind, but he also had number 7. Coaches look really smart when they have great players playing for them. It's pretty simple. Like, who was the guy, not Reinsdorf, but Krause, Jerry Krause with the Bulls, right? He did a good job. But he got full of himself because he was riding the coattails of Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan makes a lot of people look smart. That's all. That's how it works. Nice work, Tony. I appreciate that. 503-248-06funny. 06funny. Now I'm losing it. I'm not even an hour into the show. I'm already losing it. It's derailing. 06funny. Our telephone number here is 503-248-06funny. Tony, you're messing me up, man. Rachel chimes in. Your problems are radio entertainment. It's the chance to send wisecracks to the host. And then she said, pet rats were fun. I never had a pet rat. I had hamsters. And then one time we were taking them somewhere. I don't know if it was to the vet or where, but my brother and I each had a hamster. And so I had them in a shoebox on the transportation. I was in the rig with my mom, and they started brawling with one another. So I put my finger in between them to try and break it up, and one of them bit me on the finger and drew blood. That's what I remember about that experience. I had hamsters. That's a great part about growing up in the countryside of Oklahoma. I had hamsters. I had a great dog. I had my cat Tiger. I had my horse Charlie until my dad took it on a long walk and came back alone. I'm not even joking about that. And I had ducks. I had chickens. I had everything out there. It was awesome. And then Nikki, our golden retriever, would keep an eye on all of the animals. And she was perfect like that, keeping guard, watching out. Because, we had, coyotes and foxes out there. And they were always trying to get into the chicken pen because they wanted some grub, I guess. I don't know. But that's how that went down. And then Charlie the rooster. And he was a mean son of a gun, too. I learned a lot from Charlie. One, you don't mess with his ladies because he'll flog you. Like, he would come up and jump on your back and try to peck your neck. He did that to my dad once, and my dad drop kicked him like a Reggie Roby high punt to try and teach him a lesson. So, a lot of exciting times out there. I also learned about the birds and the bees from Charlie as well. Hey, Dad, why is Charlie rolling around hopping on their backs? He was not ready to have that conversation yet. All right, when we come back, my man, Sean Hyken, our Trailblazers insider from Rose Garden Report, is going to join me in studio. We'll talk some playoff basketball. I'll get his take on the Nico comments. And you can be a part of the conversation, 503-248-0620. You can find me on social at Chad and Rip City. You can find Sean there at Hyken. You got the Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, let me tell you how cool Sean Highkin is. I forgot to reach out to him yesterday, so I hit him up this morning. I was like, dude, what do you got going today? He's like, well, I can come in studio if you want. I'm like, that's exactly what I want. So thanks for coming in, man. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
You know what's great? I over the last few years, maybe it's because the Blazers have been so rough, but I go through phases with sports where I get burned out on certain sports, and then I go to something else, and then I come back. But, you know, this second half of the Blazers season with their uptick in performance leading right into the playoffs, I've thoroughly enjoyed the first-round games so far. We've had a lot of compelling action.
You know what's fun for me these last few years when the Blazers haven't really been in the mix at this time of year? Being able to just watch the playoffs as a fan and not feeling like I have to publicly have like you're not going to see me on Twitter during the play. Like you're not going to go to my account. I'm just like you're not going to see me like tweeting takes or anything about the playoffs. I can just sit and watch it as a fan, and I have no professional obligation to comment on any of it or be a part of any of the discourses that I don't want to be a part of it. I can just sit back and enjoy it.
Yeah, it's so much fun. I was thinking about you the other night because you and I throughout the year, we've talked a lot about the Detroit Pistons and their uptick in improvement from the worst team in the league to now being 44 wins in the playoffs. And they looked really good in the first two games in New York. And I was just impressed with Cade Cunningham. I thought Jalen Duren, after a rough game one, played extremely well in game two without Isaiah Stewart on the floor. That impressed me. I like their coach. That team, you know, I thought when it happened in the moment when they got that 21-0 run, they gave up the 21-zip run to the Knicks and lost game one. I thought, man, that could be tough to overcome. But you heard him after the game. Cade Cunningham was like, hey, we had fun. That was a good experience. And they came out with the same positive energy in game two and played well. And now, you know, for a young team going back home, I don't know if they're going to win this series, but I know they're going to be able to put a lot of pressure on New York. That place is going to be off the charts. And I love seeing young teams with new faces that maybe people aren't familiar with having success. That was cool.
Yeah, and, you know, to your point about Cade Cunningham, it was the thing that I think was really encouraging to see, and the thing that makes me really excited about him as far as, you know, his future is a big part of why the Pistons, I mean, obviously some of it was the coaching change, but the Pistons didn't really do that much with their roster over the offseason.
Yeah.
And probably the biggest reason, the biggest factor in why they went from the worst team in the league to, you know, a 6th seed in the playoffs is because this is the season that Cade Cunningham made the leap from, you know, being, you know, number one overall pick. People think he's going to be good, but he's got some injury issues, kind of up and down his first couple of years in the league.
Yeah.
And then this year he makes the leap and he's an all-star and he's getting all NBA consideration. And then he wasn't very good and that was his first playoff game of his career, was game one of this series, because the Pistons haven't made the playoffs since he's been drafted. He wasn't very good in game one. And then in game two, he was like, okay, it only took him one game to get adjusted to playoff basketball, and he was really good in game two. So I thought that was really encouraging to see, you know, his adjustments from game one and game two and his improvement.
The other thing, too, over the last year, like I've really grown to appreciate Jalen Brunson. His play, he's got kind of a quirky movement because he's a lefty, and I've always had a hard time guarding lefties on the floor, but he gets to his spots. He's got a bit of a post-up game. He's really tough. I like his toughness, but he's got a flair for the dramatic and big moments. Like, I really appreciate his game. He's fun to watch, and he had a great game one and game two coming off. You know, he had taken some time off because of the ankle injury, but I've been impressed with him. I just like the way he handles his business.
Did you just see that he was just named a clutch player of the year? They just announced that on TV.
I didn't see it.
I just got that notification when I got out of my car.
Well, based on my eyes, that makes sense. He's a clutch type of player. I do think, and I was talking with Brad Bakken yesterday, he's got a bit of that Trey Young aspect to his game where he manipulates the officials by drawing contact.
That's one way to put it. Yeah.
That gets annoying. Like Trey Young the other night in that, I think it was the first playing game. Like it was over the top. He was complaining about calls he was getting and complaining about calls he wasn't getting. And he was once he gets a team in the penalty, it just goes to a different level. The antics. It gets tiring to see that type of manipulation. I would think the officials would be able to do a better job of being able to see it, but they just don't.
I'm not a fan of it either. I mean, we talk about it we've been talking about it for 15 years with James Harden. We started talking about it recently with SGA, Trey Young, who you mentioned. But yeah, Jalen Brunson is as guilty as anybody of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I actually agree with Tom Thibodeau. Yeah, he summed up my frustration with NBA officiating. look, call the game however you want to call the game, but just be consistent.
Right.
But night to night, it's the inconsistency in how they apply the rules that drives me crazy. But if you're consistent on both ends, like if you're going to let guys play, do it on both ends so they know and can adjust, right? That's similar to a pitcher in baseball where
strike zone.
Yes, once you get a feel, if the ump's consistent on what he's calling a strike and a ball, then you can adjust and make and be able to move forward. But if the strike zone changes from first to third innings to 6 to 9, then that's a problem.
Or if they're calling it one way for one pitcher or for one team and then not the other way, like that's
no. Just be consistent. So I actually understood what Thibodeau was talking about there. The series that I was most excited about going into the playoffs was Game 2 tonight, Rockets and Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
I leaned Houston and picked Houston to win the series because of their rebounding, their size, and they're a great defensive ball club. But I did acknowledge that their inability to score consistently and their lack of half-court offense could be an issue, and a lot of those issues popped up. So after Game 1, Rockets were down by 23. They came all the way back to cut it to a 4-point deficit in the fourth, and they played awful offense throughout the night. How do you think they feel going into Game 2 tonight?
I mean, I think they're going to feel like they can't play much worse on offense, but I also I kind of liked the Rockets in that matchup too going into the series. I just don't know how they're going to be able to score enough to win 4 games in that series. That's where I come down on it.
Especially if Van Vliet's not making threes.
Right.
Yeah, it's tough to watch them. They're probably. Do you think they're one of the teams that will consider sniffing around Kevin Durant?
I don't know about Durant. I don't know if that's the Phoenix guy that they're really going after. I think it's been made pretty well known that if it ever gets to the point where Phoenix is considering moving Devin Booker, they have all of Phoenix's picks that they got from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And they can say, hey, we'll give you your picks back and get you out of, this hole that you're in as far as assets. But I don't think they're necessarily interested in doing that for 37-year-old Kevin Durant. I think they'd rather do that for Devin Booker if that's a possibility, or if Giannis comes in. I don't know if a Kevin Durant rental, and I know he's tight with Ime Udoka, and Ime Udoka was an assistant coach in Brooklyn when he was there. So I know there's some relationship there, but I don't know if that's the play I see them making.
Do you think Giannis finishes his career in Milwaukee?
I don't know, man. Like it's been, how many times have we done this with? It's kind of similar to the Dame thing, where like we've done this how many times with, like, oh, is he gonna ask out this summer? And then usually the Bucks will, whether it was the Drew trade or it was a Dame trade that was like kind of kept him happy. I don't know what the move is that the Bucks have to make this time. I don't know that they have the assets to really pull off something else big, but I don't know. I don't know.
Interesting.
I
Yeah.
think it's kind of a Dame thing where like Giannis wants to play his whole career in Milwaukee, but if they're just never going to be able to contend, which as it stands right now, I don't know what the path back is for the Bucks to get back into contention.
Yeah.
So, we'll see. I would lean no, just because you always kind of assume that at one point one of these stars is going to want to go somewhere, but I don't know.
Sean Hyken, our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report, is in studio. What did you think about the Lakers' performance last night in Game 2 after getting throttled in Game 1 by the Timberwolves? They played more aggressively. The intensity level was better. What did you see from the Lakers last night?
It's so funny. Like, I can't tell you. This is probably going back at least like 10 years now. LeBron has talked about how he kind of goes into some playoff series just sort of feeling it out. And, the first game, he'll just kind of not really do much and just kind of try to see what the other team is doing. I still actually like Minnesota in the series, just because I think once you get past LeBron, and Luka's been awesome in both of the games.
He's looked great.
Once you get past LeBron and Luka, like I don't like LA's depth as nearly as much as I like Minnesota's depth, and I like Minnesota in this series, but I definitely feel a lot more like it's going to be a competitive series after what happened last night than I did before.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think it's going to be a long series. I expect the Warriors and Rockets to go long, just like I do the Nuggets and Clippers. That's been a very compelling series throughout the first 2 games. Clippers had the turnover issues and mistakes in Game 1. Jokic was great. And then in Game 2, it was a flip. The Nuggets couldn't hold on to the basketball. They couldn't make their free throws. And then Norman Powell and Kawhi Leonard with big shots late. That game by Kawhi was a classic high-efficient game from Kawhi where he got to all his spots, made shots, played great defense. Like, he was terrific. I just don't know if they can get that from him throughout the series.
Well, I mean, in the playoffs, when you have 2 or 3 days off between games, like that's
What you do in the first round.
right. Which I think that's gonna. That's gonna. I mean, I agree. I think that's been the best series so far in terms of just like how enjoyable the games are to watch. And this is the best Kawhi has looked maybe since 2017. That last year he had, that last full season he had with San Antonio, where he was an MVP candidate, and like it was like that year and the Toronto year. That might be the best that he's looked. This since he came back, he didn't really play much the first half of the year, and they were, holding him on back-to-backs and stuff. So just going into the playoffs, you just had no idea what he's going to look like. But, I mean, if Kawhi can stay healthy and look like this for, multiple series in a row, like, I'm starting to wonder if maybe we were underestimated. Like, is Kawhi the best? Like, I think that, I mean, obviously the best player in the series is Jokic, but, like, Kawhi might be higher on the list of like best player in like the Western Conference playoffs than maybe we thought. We maybe just weren't giving it a lot of thought just because the injuries are so up in the air with him always, and we just can never count on him being healthy. But I mean, right now he's healthy and he looks pretty much like, peak Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, here's James Harden after game number 2. He was asking about Kawhi and whether, he gets the respect that he deserves for being the type of player he is.
No. From people for what he's endured and coming back from?
No, not even a little bit. It's always negative. It's always, what he's been through and what he's not able to do just because of something that he can't control. But we don't appreciate how great he is when he's actually out there and putting on performances like this tonight. I feel like that about everybody that, is in the league that goes through something that, that's out of their hands or they can't control. It's like, it's always the negative, it's always the hate that people want to talk about, which is something that we got to live with, I guess, in this world. But, as for me being closer to him, every single day and seeing the work that he puts in and you appreciate him.
I disagree with James Harden there. I think we all respect Kawhi Leonard's game. The problem is when you're a max player and you only play a handful of games every year and you can't be counted on in the postseason, then people are going to have comments about that, right? Because availability is a big deal in sport. And Kawhi, as great as he is, the problem is we just don't know when he's going to play.
Yeah, it's not like when he talks about, like, oh, it's the hate and it's the negativity. It's not hate to say, this guy is awesome when he's healthy, but he's never healthy. Like, that's just kind of where most people land on Kawhi Leonard for the last half decade or so.
Yeah.
I don't think that's hate.
No, it's not hate at all. We respect him, and we want to see him play because when he does play, look what he did in game 2. He was unbelievable.
Yeah, that series is going 7.
He's just a unique player because he can shoot the 3. He's incredible on defense. Physically, he's dominant, and he's got those hands that are just absurd. The big hands. He can do everything. We just want to see more of it.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at also, Denver in that series. It's like, I don't even know if Jokic has been like great in this series, but it's really just, it comes down to, Michael Porter Jr. and like, so which of the role players is going to step up?
That's true. All right, we'll keep things rolling. We're going to come back. I want to get Sean's reaction to the latest from Nico Harrison, and we'll get his take on the upcoming draft lottery. The coin flip went down between the Blazers and Suns, so Portland will be 10th with, just behind the Suns in terms of percent chance to jump into the top 4 and access to the number 1 pick. You got the Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, Sean. And Nico Harrison.
Mm-hmm.
The more he talks, the more I'm enjoying life. I can't believe some of the stuff he says, but this takes the absolute cake in everything that he said post Luka trade. I can't believe he said this. Like when I first heard it, I thought that's AI. He didn't really say that, but he did. So take a listen to this exchange when he was asked about, if he was surprised or taken back by the fans' reaction.
I did know that Luka was important to the fan base. I didn't quite know it to what level, but really the way we looked at it is, if you're putting a team on the floor that's Kyrie, Clay, PJ, Anthony Davis, and Lively, we feel that's a championship caliber team, and we would have been winning at a high level, and that would have quieted some of the outrage. And so unfortunately we weren't able to do that, so it just continued to, go on and on.
Now, this is a serious question for you. How can you be the general manager of a basketball team and not understand how important the top 3 player in the world is to your fan base? Seriously.
This is something, now to tie this a little bit back to Blazers stuff, the last few years, and I realize it's a little bit of a different situation because Dame never took the Blazers to the finals.
Mm-hmm.
And Dame, even at his best, was never like a top 5 player in the NBA the way that Luka is. But all of the last couple of years that he was here, before he actually requested a trade, when there were people both, here locally and nationally who were like, the Blazers should just, go ahead and trade him and just start over and rebuild. I don't know. I mean, you see what happens when, you have this guy that's like the, one of the, the greatest player in franchise history, or, a guy who's like at that level with that fan base, and you just unilaterally trade him without him asking for it. You kind of see what happens with, you're seeing what's happened with this. There's just so many levels of this whole thing. Besides, I mean, that clip that you just played was pretty amazing. But the one that I just also can't really, reconcile is, did you read the story on Monday from ESPN, the Tim McMahon story about kind of the dysfunction within the Mavericks organization, about how they fired like their longtime trainer who was tight with Luka, and then the 2 guys they brought in, first of all, they hired the guy who was under the other guy before they hired the guy above him, and the 2 of them don't get along, and also one of them doesn't like have the proper certifications for, being an NBA athletic trainer. That, there was all this kind of stuff, and you hear that in that clip that you just played of Nico talking about like, well, it's unfair to judge because we were never healthy, we just had too many injuries to judge, and it's like, okay, you're using the injury excuse, but you also hired trainers who were unqualified to, and may have made this whole situation worse. There's just the levels on which, even besides just how tone deaf the I didn't know how much the fans liked Luka thing, the levels on which he's just mishandled every single part of this since the trade is just, it's pretty staggering.
All right, let's speculate for just a moment. Do you think this is something, for whatever the reason may be, maybe he felt slighted by Luka, or maybe he really loves defense as much as he says he does? Do you think this is a case where Nico went to Patrick Dumont and presented the idea of trading Luka? Or do you think it was the ownership group that went to Nico and said, hey, we're trading Luka. I need you to get a deal done. We're not going to move forward with him. And then Nico has to go out and make a bad deal and then try to take bullets for the ownership group. Like, do you think Nico pursued this with Dumont?
All the reporting, I'm obviously, like, I don't have any, direct firsthand knowledge of how any of this went, but all the reporting from, people that I trust around the situation, Tim McMahon, who I just mentioned, there's certainly been others too, is that Patrick Dumont is known for being a guy that, if, first of all, knows that he doesn't really know that much about basketball, and second of all, like, is a guy that, like, when he has somebody in place who's in a specific role, he will defer to that person and say, you're the expert here. And, all the reporting has been that Nico came to him with this idea and said, hey, this is what I want to do, and, lay out all the reasons. This is why, we think Anthony Davis is a better fit than Luka. This is why I think we should do this. And Patrick Dumont basically said, if you lay out all these reasons, if you think that this is the best thing to do, then we'll defer to you on it. That's what all the reporting has been. I mean, it doesn't seem like it really adds up, but all of the stuff that's come out since then has kind of pointed to that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Nico pursued this. I think he presented it to Patrick DeMont, and I think DeMont went along with it and leaned on him for that. That's why I think here's how I see this playing out. DeMont, because he doesn't know basketball the way Nico does, and that's not really saying much because I'm not sure Nico knows what he's doing. That's why it feels like it could be personal to me. But I think DeMont is probably going to be or continue to be taken back by how much criticism the franchise is getting from the fan base, not to mention the lost revenue. And I think eventually he's going to be like, dude, I can't believe I trusted you to make this move. It's been a total disaster. And then Nico's going to get fired. That's how I see it playing out.
I mean, eventually that's going to happen. But the thing that's kind of interesting about this whole thing is that this trade, and this is obviously like one of the worst trades in NBA history, as has been talked about endlessly for the last 2.5 months since it happened. But this trade was the first time that any of us ever really thought, oh, Nico might not be that good at this, because you look at kind of what he did before this. You know,
Yeah.
they trade, you know, they trade for Kyrie Irving, and then at the deadline last year, they kind of rebuild the whole rotation on the fly, bringing in Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington, and his first big draft pick was Derek Lively, who was really good.
Yeah.
Up until February 1st of 2025, he's done a really good job of building this roster and building a team around Luka that was a contender that went to the finals last year.
Yeah.
And so, up until if you cut off Nico's track record before this trade,
Yeah.
if you're Patrick Dumont, you look at him and say, you know what? He's done a good job so far. He built a finals team. We've trusted him to make these decisions since we bought the team from Mark Cuban, and so far he's delivered. If he really thinks this is the best idea, then maybe he knows what he's doing, because he kind of built up some equity. I mean, obviously he's more than blown all that equity now with the fallout from the Luka trade, but he did have a lot of equity built up from the way that he built that team that made the finals and the way that he kind of was able to maximize what Luka was able to do. That if you're Patrick Dumont and you're, self-proclaimed not a basketball expert, if he comes to you with something that even seems like a controversial idea like trading Luka, there is reason for you to look at it and say, this doesn't seem like a great idea, but this guy so far has shown that he knows what he's doing. Maybe he knows what he's doing here too.
Yeah. The part that surprises me too is, Nico kept it real quiet. What's interesting about that is when I'm going to make a big decision, you've probably done this before too. I'll go to my dad or somebody I truly respect to be like, hey, I'm thinking about making a big move. What do you see here? Because I'm looking for someone to give me their point of view, someone I respect, maybe some things I missed on, because I acknowledge I'm not the smartest guy on the planet. And if Nico would have reached out to any of his guys, people around him, and he said, hey, I'm thinking about trading Luka to the Lakers for AD and a future first-round pick, I know that someone would have been like, dude, what are you doing, man? Are you crazy? Or if Patrick Dumont would have floated the idea to other people in his network, there had to be someone that would have been like, you need to take a step back before you make a move like that. You would think, right?
You would.
Because we were all stunned. And if you just ask any of us, and we're not with the Mavericks every day, like, hey, we're thinking about trading Luka for AD in a future first, we'd be like, why? Why would you do that? That's crazy. Like, that's how insane the deal is. I'm just surprised that no one asked any questions.
Well, but so the thing, I mean, you're absolutely right. If it were me and I were making like a big decision in my life about like, oh, do I might take this job, I might move here, or whatever. There are certainly people in my life that I would, run something like that by before I made a big decision. The difference between us and people in this position is that you and I are kind of private citizens, and whatever decisions we make in our lives aren't, what is affecting these, billion-dollar businesses, and also just the amount of, who is here. Let me ask you this: who is Nico gonna ask about this that has enough expertise in the field that he would, trust, that isn't gonna then go tell somebody, and that's gonna lead to somebody telling somebody else, and then the whole thing gets out? Because that's just when you're operating at this level with.
Yeah, you got to be careful who you talk to, because the word would get out, and you're trying to keep it quiet. Well, my guess is there's got to be someone that he can trust to keep their pie hole shut, like, I don't know, at Nike, that's in the basketball department. Maybe it's somebody that works for a different team that he can trust. He's got to have a network of people that are close enough to his inner circle that he knows he can trust to keep their mouth shut. There's got to be someone.
But if you're somebody at Nike, you may have this 20-year relationship with Nico, but who's the most important basketball person at Nike? It's LeBron James.
Yeah.
Who does this trade directly affect? LeBron James, and his
You're right.
co-clutch. Like, there's nobody that you can tell that isn't going to have some, like, it's not going to.
That's true. But if you run by your wife or someone close to you, like in your family that you know is not going to talk, they'd probably be like, "You're going to do what?"
Yeah.
So you're going to trade Luka?
Yeah. But the problem is that, like, again, it's a couple things. One, like, there's nobody that he can really talk to about this. It's not going to, tell somebody else, and the whole thing is going to get out and it's going to get blown up. Or, like I said, if you're Nico, you just built this team that went to the finals last year. You're pretty convinced that you know what you're doing. And if you think that Luka's not the guy, then you think Luka's not the guy. And clearly your owner has signaled that he'll trust you with this decision.
It's crazy. Oh, by the way, Luka's been the best player on the floor for the Lakers.
It's just it's really awesome how, like,
he's been good.
We thought
really good.
We thought the Lakers were just, this last couple of years, LeBron's 40, AD's gonna, he has the injury issues. They're gonna age out at some point. It's pretty cool that the Lakers are just got gift wrapped, a top 5 player in the league at age 25. Like, that's awesome.
In my entire life, they have always come up with the next guy.
Whoever it is.
It doesn't matter. Take your pick. They got Magic. And then after that, they wound up with Shaq. And then they got
Shaq
Kobe
and Kobe
Bryant.
the same summer, same offseason.
Shaq and Kobe, Pau Gasol, LeBron.
They tried with Dwight Howard. That one didn't end up working out. But at the time, they thought that was going to be the thing that set them up for the post-Kobe. And then LeBron just, was a free agent and just, like, decided he wanted to live in L.A., and so they got LeBron.
They had Chris Paul until David Stern shut it down. Like, you just take your pick. It's crazy. So it's amazing to me. Now, I'm thankful for the player movement because, Luka being in L.A. and Jimmy Butler being in San Francisco makes the playoffs, wildly more fascinating. I can tell you that much.
It does. I don't know if I love that a couple of franchises just always kind of get these guys without giving up very much.
No. Well, that's the part that's frustrating, especially as a Blazer fan. It's like, really? Again, the Lakers? Like, when they got Pau Gasol and I saw what they gave up, I was like, what? How did they pull that one off?
That's one of the worst ones of all time.
And we all knew what it meant. It's like, well, Kobe's going to win more championships. That was the missing piece, and he was instantly great. Like, as soon as he arrived in L.A. and got on the floor, they went on a big winning streak.
Yeah.
In basketball, it takes sometimes one player can make a tremendous impact.
And there are just some franchises that just kind of always happens to.
Yeah. Again, that's why you get conspiracy theorists out there. When you have a trade that's so bad, the only thing that makes sense are the crazy ideas.
Maybe it was just a really bad trade. Maybe this guy just got way too overconfident and didn't have enough people telling him, hey, no, this is actually a terrible idea.
Well, that's the thing, too. Like, you think there would be people, okay, so let's say Nico wants to make this move. Then sit down with your basketball people and have a closed-door meeting and say, hey, this is what we're considering. What do you guys think? And then everyone else in the room would be like, we can't do this. Are you crazy? Like, no one else. There would be someone that would speak up to be like, what are we doing? It's Luka Doncic. Right?
The thing is, though, I mean, if you read this Tim McMahon story from Monday, it sure sounds like Nico is somebody who
he's power hungry,
doesn't really like being told, being disagreed with, or being told, some of the staffers that he's fired have been people that disagree, weren't yes men, and so if you're somebody like that, you're not going to run by somebody because you want to show everybody that you're the one that's in charge and you're the one that's making the decisions.
That's unfortunate. One of the things that Joe Lacob did that I learned during my time down in the Bay Area that I like is, when he took over, he made moves that weren't popular, right?
Trading Monte Ellis.
Yeah, the fans hated that because Monte Ellis was a fan favorite. The move turned out to be the right move, and it resulted in their first championship in many, many years. But the one thing he did was he would encourage people within the organization, like, hey, if you have ideas, no matter how crazy they are, present them. What he was trying to avoid was some type of groupthink, right? Where you have the man in charge, no one's afraid to speak out because they don't want to, double-cross the owner. But Joe Lacob encouraged that type of environment. And what happens is when you have people in a position that know they can speak freely and present their ideas, whether they're used or not, they're not going to be reprimanded for putting their ideas out there. That type of discussion can create better decisions and better ideas.
I mean, there's a reason the Warriors are where they are and the Mavericks are where they are.
A very good point. And then Jalen Brunson on top of that. You're watching Jalen Brunson play, and you're like, oh, yeah, he used to be with the Mavs too. Isn't that crazy?
That one you put on Cuban because I think he thought he was going to be able to get him at a discount, and he was not. Yeah.
No. And, it worked out. Brunson obviously in a very good spot right now. So that was amazing to me. Every time I watch Luka, I'm just going to be like, wow, I cannot believe they let him go because he looks great. And I'm excited to see how this series plays out. But, yeah, and you can see it now, just like Steph Curry looking revitalized with Jimmy. I watched LeBron, and, LeBron is not my favorite player, Sean, but I'll say this. I really have been impressed with what he's done since Luka arrived. He understands that they need to have the ball in Luka's hands more than LeBron's hands. So he's committed himself to finding different ways to impact the game, either through offensive rebounding or through picking his spots defensively. Like LeBron has been very engaged in finding ways to impact the game, which I respect.
The thing that's so fascinating about this to me is I think this is the first time in LeBron's career that he's on a team where he is not the best player on the team, and he knows that, and he's cool with that.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only, like, this is
a big deal because it's hard for super big time stars to understand that and accept it. And he has.
Right. And it's at the point now where, like, they get Luka, and it's like, okay, I'm 40. This guy's 25. This guy's a perennial MVP candidate. I'm just going to, try to fit in around what he's doing as opposed to vice versa, like it's been for every single other, whether it, at those first Cleveland teams where it was like LeBron and like Mo Williams and Boobie Gibson, or they were trying to make the Miami thing work those first couple of years where, like, obviously it was Wade's team, but LeBron was obviously the best player on those teams because, he was like peak LeBron at that point. And then goes to the Lakers. They get Anthony Davis. LeBron's still the best player on those teams.
Yeah.
This is the first time where somebody that's clearly a better player in the year 2025 than LeBron is on LeBron's team. And LeBron is like, yeah, this is just what it is.
That's great. What did you think about Rich Paul's comments that the Miami Heat, when LeBron went there and joined Chris Bosh and D-Wade, was not a big three?
That's not how it was sold at the time. I don't know. I remember that little pep rally that they had after the decision.
With the three of them.
It was sold as the three of them. I mean, it's whatever. He can say whatever on whatever podcast he said that on.
But what do you think's going on there? Is that just part of the PR machine around LeBron to try and make him, to paint him in a certain light in terms of his legacy?
It's always something like that with whenever it's like him or somebody in one of his circles saying something on one of these podcasts or these shows or whatever.
Yeah. Who do you think is the best of all time?
The best of all time at
NBA.
I'm going to kind of be the one that's copping out here and say it's, different. You can't compare eras. I'm not like a hard line like LeBron or MJ guy or whatever, but no, I mean, LeBron is the best of my kind of, like, I was just like getting into the NBA like the last couple of years of Jordan, so I didn't have that whole
you didn't have the whole
run.
experience.
LeBron has been the guy for basically my entire adult life.
Yeah, so you grew up more with LeBron and Kobe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. That makes sense. I'm the same way. Like I because I've been around some older guys who have covered the league for years and years. It's hard for me to speak about like the center position, right?
Right.
I didn't watch Wilt Chamberlain play basketball. I never had that luxury, but I talked to the people who did, and so I respect them in terms of how dominant he was.
Right, or like Bill Russell or Kareem or like all those guys were before my time.
Yeah, like I got Kareem, but towards the latter half of his career.
Was not the same thing as like the 70s and early 80s version.
Yeah, when he was in Milwaukee, just absolutely dominant, right? So, but I did have the luxury of seeing Magic, Bird, MJ, Kobe, and LeBron in the absolute throughout their whole careers. So I can tell you about those guys, but the guys before, I don't want to speak about it because I didn't see them with my own eyes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's always kind of what I default to with this stuff.
So when I talk to younger guys, like, dudes in their 20s, and they're all about LeBron, I get it. Yeah. I would be too. If I didn't grow up with MJ and I had seen LeBron and Kobe, I would be convinced that LeBron and Kobe were the two best players I'd ever seen. Same thing with Larry Bird. Larry Bird is my favorite, and he was truly great. But if you didn't grow up watching it, you would look at him and be like, there's no way. I understand that. I get it, Just like here in Portland, we see it with Blazer fans. There's three guys that are always discussed about being the best. Bill Walton.
Clyde Drexler.
And Dame. Now, when Bill Walton was the MVP and he was dominating the NBA Finals, I was two.
It was also just such a short run with him, too, because, like, he had he's drafted in 74. They have the 77 title. The following year, they're 50-10, and he goes down with a foot injury. He never plays another game for the Blazers.
Yeah.
So it's such a short run that it's not like there's like all these years you can point to. You basically, when you're making the argument to a younger person about Bill Walton, you're basically pointing to that one season, that 77 season.
Yeah, because he was MVP and Finals MVP and a dominant player.
And to other people, it's going to be more of a, it's going to be more of like, Clyde Drexler was here longer. He led them to 2 finals. And then it's like, Dame was the all-time franchise leading scorer and he had those 2 buzzer beaters to win this. Like, it's all these different. I would kind of in that discussion, even though it was a shorter peak, I would kind of default to Walton there.
Yeah.
Because he's the only, he was the best player on the Blazers' only championship team. He was the only Blazers player ever to win MVP while he was with the Blazers.
Yes.
And just, in terms of, he was also like, as far as like the best peak, he was the best player while he was healthy.
Yes.
Of any player that's ever played.
Yeah. At their peaks.
Yeah.
Walton is the best.
Yeah.
And most people would agree with that.
Right. And then the arguments for the other guys are like with Dame, it's like the career stats. He leads the team in like all the statistical categories. With Clyde, it was the longevity while also, being the best player on 2 teams that made the finals.
Yeah. Yeah. So I acknowledge all 3 is
Absolutely.
great. I don't have an issue with.
Yeah.
What I don't like is when someone who never saw certain guys play try to tell me that.
Yeah.
It's like, I wish I could have seen Wilt Chamberlain play in his heyday, though, because that would have been a lot of fun. All right, Sean Heiken's in the studio. We're going to come back. I want to get his take on the draft lottery, which is coming up on May 12th. I appreciate your time as well. Thank you for listening, my friends. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. I don't know if you've ever had this happen. I was talking about it earlier on the show. I'm planning a trip to L.A. because I want to catch a couple of Dodger games.
Uh-huh.
I pick one series every year and go watch a couple of games. But I didn't know it at the time, but the hotel prices in downtown were off the charts compared to normal. And so I did a little research, and apparently Willie Nelson and Bob Dylan are having some type of musical festival. So it's driving the prices up on the hotels to unacceptable levels. So I was very upset about that. But last night, right before I closed my eyes to get a little nighty-night time in, I went back to Hotels.com, and I got a price in downtown exactly what I wanted. And I was like, it must have been a
last-minute cancellation.
Yeah, or something like that. So I booked it, and then I get the note today, your reservation's been canceled. I think what happened is there must have been a glitch.
Slipped through.
It slipped through, and I got a price that they're like, no, we're going to cancel you.
I mean, you should be protected there, right?
I should be, but I'm not.
So the craziest one of those that I've ever had to deal with was back when I was covering the Bulls. This was 2017, the year that they were the 8th seed and the Celtics were the 1 seed.
Yeah.
And so I was going to Boston. I was working for The Athletic at the time, and so they had me go to Boston for the first round of the playoffs. Not only was that the first, the Celtics and the Bruins were both in the playoffs at the time. That was the Yankees-Red Sox series at Fenway, and it was marathon weekend. So I had to stay, I had to get a hotel out 30 miles out of town is the only thing I could get that wasn't like $700 a night because it was all of that stuff going on at the same time.
Gosh, it's so crazy. All right, they had the coin toss. Blazers lose the coin toss, so the Suns will be 9 in the draft lottery coming up on the 12th. The Blazers are 10th. How big of a difference in layman's terms is it from 9 to 10 with the Blazers and Suns?
So in terms of the actual percentage difference, it is 0.1%. Like the Blazers had, they go from, by losing this coin toss, they go from having a 3.8% chance at the number 1 pick to a 3.7% chance, which means that out of the 1,000 combinations of ping pong balls, this coin toss gave the Suns and, by extension, the Rockets, because the Rockets have the Suns pick, it gave them one extra combination of ping pong balls out of 1,000. So in that sense, it's pretty negligible unless it's that exact combination that happens to be the one that hits. But I mean, it's also, it is not ideal for the Blazers. It's not what you want because now if nobody jumps them or they stay where they are, they'll be at 10 instead of at 9. So, it's certainly not what you want, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world.
How do you think they're going to handle it? Obviously we hope they jump up. We hope they get number 1 or at least into the top 4. But if, let's say they don't, and they're sitting there at, 10, do you think they'll take a player or do you think they would consider options at that point?
I think they'll consider options in both directions. I think if they move up into the top 4 and we're talking about like Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, VJ Edgecombe, that level of guy, I don't think they're trading that pick. I think that if they move up into the top 4, they're taking whichever one of the guys they think makes sense to take. I think they would be, and I remember Joe said this last week when he was on your show, that they like a lot of the guys in that 9-10 range. So I think they would be happy to take a player, but I also think if they don't move up and they stay at 10 and they stay in that range, and there's an opportunity to do whatever, and I don't know which player this might be, but whatever this year's version of the Denny Avdia trade is, where you use the salary for, whether it's, Grant Simons, 8, whoever, one of those guys, and the 10th pick to get a player that they feel fits in the same way that they felt that about Denny Avdia and use the 14th pick last year. I think if they stay at 10 and don't move up and the right deal presents itself, I don't think they would be opposed to using the pick in that way. But if they move up into the top 4, I can't really see them trading out of that spot.
No, all 4, or at least the guys we've talked about that are in the top 4, those are all high leverage players.
Totally.
Yeah. And that's the exciting part. That's why you don't even have to get number 1. If you get into the top 4, more than likely you're going to get a difference maker.
Which is the 16.9% chance of happening with the way that the coin toss shook out, which is not 0.
No, it's not 0. All right, Sean Hyken. Hey, thanks for coming in, buddy.
Yeah,
that was fun.
Always good to be here.
All right, on social at Hyken. Sean Hyken, you can read him at rosegardenreport.com. We'll keep things rolling. I've got a special guest at 5:20. Appreciate your time. Right now, Celtics on top of the Magic, 37-32, second quarter, midway through in Boston. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, what's going on? It's now 5 o'clock. Chad here. Taking a look at the NBA scoreboard with the playoffs right now. Second quarter in Boston. The Celtics lead the Magic by a score of 43-35. Jaylen Brown with 12 points and 7 boards. Jason Tatum is not playing tonight with a bruise in his wrist. First quarter in Cleveland, the Heat lead the Cavs by a score of 16-14. And coming up at 6:30 on TNT, it's Game 2, Warriors and Rockets from Houston. Golden State leads the series 1-0. The Rockets tonight are favored by 3.5. Coming up next on the Rip City Drive, I've got a pair of tickets for the Portland Thorns. All you have to do is listen to me for your chance to win. And then we have a special guest coming up at 5:20 here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Oh, what a night. All right, Celtics 43 and the Magic 35. No Jason Tatum tonight. And we've got Game 2 of the Warriors and Rockets coming up at 6:30. Loving the basketball action so far. It's been a lot of fun. NFL Draft is coming up tomorrow. I've put in my prayers for Cam Scatteraboo to wind up on the Denver Broncos, which would be absolutely fabulous. And I've got a pair of tickets to give away right now for the Portland Thorns. They're going to be taking on Louisville coming up on April 27th over at Providence Park. You can have a great time at the game, courtesy of us here at Rip City Radio. So if you'd like to go check out the Thorns against Louisville on the 27th, call now. We'll take the first caller through 503-248-0620. 503-248-0620. That is your telephone number. Fire away right now, 503-248-0620. First caller through, we'll get a pair of tickets for the Portland Thorns, 503-248-0620. We'll take the first caller through. You get a pair of tickets for the Portland Thorns, and I'll have more tickets to give away for the Thorns on the Rip City Drive tomorrow. I've got a special guest coming up at 5:20. Her name is Tracy Normoyle. She works here at iHeart, but her son, Jake, is now an Oregon State Beaver, and he's going to be playing on the offensive line. He just got finished with spring ball, but I want to talk with her and have her on the show because she went through the entire recruiting process, not just with Oregon State, but with other schools as well. She's a Duck, and her husband played football for the Ducks back in the early 90s when the foundation for the current Ducks program was being laid by Coach Brooks. So I think she's going to be able to share a lot of insight on NIL, on the process, what the Oregon State coaching staff was like. And for you parents out there who have high school athletes who are going to be going through a recruiting process now in this wild, wild west of the NIL and the transfer portal, I think she'll give you some good pointers on what to look for, what questions to ask, what to think about. So I'm looking forward to the conversation with Tracy coming up here in about 15 minutes. You can reach out to me, 503-248-0620, 503-248-0620. We got the NFL Draft coming up tomorrow. I think we all know that Cam Ward's going to go number 1 to the Titans. And number 2, I would expect the Browns to take Travis Hunter, Heisman Trophy winner and dynamic two-way player, both at receiver and corner. And then after that, that's where things get a little bit fuzzy. Are the Giants going to take Shedeur Sanders, or are they going to take the pass rusher from Penn State, Abdul Carter? And then after that. But I think the big story to watch is Shedeur Sanders and where he's going to end up. And if he's not going to be taken in the top 5 or go number 3 to the Giants, how far is he going to fall? And I think with Shedeur, and this has been reported now, that there are some people who have interviewed him, who have sat down with him through this process leading up to the draft, where they're concerned about his personality, his demeanor, the way he carries himself, right? The way he operates in an interview. And according to reports, he's come off as very sure of himself, almost overconfident, not afraid to point the finger at teammates. And that could very well be the case. I do think that now it's probably a little bit different with the high-level athletes coming in to pro sports, whether it be the NBA or the NFL. These players are different now because they're millionaires. Shedeur Sanders, Caleb Williams, like these guys are making so much money in NIL dollars that they're already rich before they get into a position to where they're going to be drafted by a team. And that didn't used to be the case. So I think that's going to change certain players and the way they carry themselves when they get in those situations. Now, I can tell you about my experience with Shedeur, and I could see how he might turn someone off in an interview. And I don't have any personal issue with Shedeur at all. I mean, he doesn't know me and doesn't care about me, and that's fine. And he's a great athlete who's got a terrific father and has put himself in a position to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft. When I interviewed him at Pac-12 Media Day a couple of years ago in Las Vegas, we were conducting the interview and going through the process, and I asked him a question, and then he just took his headphones off, dropped them on the table, and walked off. He didn't say thank you, didn't say goodbye, didn't do anything. He just left. And it's one of those moments where I'm like, I guess we're done. Have a good day, Shedeur. We didn't even have an argument. There was no reason for him to be upset or frustrated or anything. He just decided he was done with the interview and walked off. I thought maybe it was me. I mean, I have been known to just naturally irritate people before, so it wouldn't have been a surprise. But then I started talking to other people in the press row, radio row, and I realized that he did that with multiple people. But the problem is when you get into an interview situation and you're talking to coaches and executives who work for these big corporations, these NFL teams, they've got high expectations. They're going to invest or looking to invest many millions of dollars into you. They expect you to operate and roll a certain way. And what happens is, and we've talked about this before, but at quarterback or when you play quarterback in the NFL, whether you want to be or not, you are thrust into a position of leadership because everyone else on the team is going to watch your work and how you operate, how you practice, how you conduct yourself in meetings, everything. Because you're setting the pace for the team because you're the quarterback. You're the de facto leader of the team, whether you want to be or not. And you've got to be willing to embrace that and understand the importance of that position and how you operate. Like, it's critical. And not only that, but you're the face of the franchise. That's the price of playing quarterback in the NFL. You're the quarterback. You're the most popular person on the team and the most well-known player in the organization because you're the quarterback. And so with that, you have to be able to communicate in a way that's different than everyone else. You have to dress differently. You have to present yourself differently. You just have to conduct yourself like you're leading a Fortune 500 company. And I realize that's tough for a lot of young guys coming into the league, but that's the reality of this situation. And so I think for Shedeur, I can see after my interaction with him how he might come off a certain way in an interview. Now, ultimately, what you're looking for in sports is a guy, can he play or not? Can he make plays? Can he lead a group of guys down the field and score points? Can he deliver the football on time and on target? That's the most important thing. I mean, you don't have to be the most well-liked guy on the team, and you can be very demanding of your guys, but if you make plays, even if you're an a-hole, if you make plays and you win games and you put your teammates in a position to have success so they can make more money in the future, they're going to follow you. Even if you don't have the best personality, you're not the funniest guy on the team, you're not exactly, the best guy to hang out with, they'll respect you and follow you because they know that you're going to help them win games and you're going to put them in a position to have better numbers, which will lead to more dollars. But when you're talking to these owners or coaches or executives, they're looking for a certain thing. They're going over you with a fine-tooth comb and trying to find any reason to go in a different direction. So I can see how he might turn some people off in an interview. And if I grew up with that type of game and Coach Prime was my dad, I would probably be a little bit arrogant as well. I get it. I understand it. He's great. I think Shador is going to be a terrific NFL quarterback. I like his demeanor on the field. I like the way he moves. I like his accuracy. I love his toughness. Really love his toughness. But quarterbacks and the best ones do this. They have a way publicly of communicating a certain message. And then privately in meetings and in practice, if someone needs to be called out, they'll call them out. But publicly, quarterbacks always, the best ones, they take the blame for the mistakes. We need to do better. I've got to play better. They don't point the finger at the offensive line and say, well, these guys aren't blocking for me. It's hard to make good plays and complete passes at a high percentage when I'm on my back all day long because these guys suck. The quarterbacks don't say that. You can't do that. You just have to learn to point the finger at yourself. And then in a closed-door meeting, you can light guys up when necessary or explain to them, like, what were you doing on this play? You broke your route off. That's not the way it's supposed to be. Here's the play. Here's where you need to be, and this is what I expect from you. But you don't point that out publicly. Quarterbacks have to take the high road, and they've got to be very team-oriented and be careful with their words. And that's a lesson and a process that a lot of these young guys have to learn. But if you make plays and you get the job done and you work your ass off, guys will follow you because they understand, like, hey, this guy's going to help us win games. He's got game, and he's going to make me a better player. And in return, I'm going to make more money on my next contract. That's really what it comes down to. But for Shador, I have high hopes for him, and I want to see him do well. But he's got to find a way to communicate in a way that would lead you to believe that he's leading a Fortune 500 company. That just comes with being a quarterback, whether you want to be or not. How you present yourself, how you look behind the podium after a game, all of that stuff. It's everything because everyone's looking at you. And I know it's a lot of pressure, but that's why you get paid the big bucks because you're in the most important position in all of sports. And it's not just on the field, but how you conduct yourself at practice, in meetings, on the field, off the field, the whole shebang, because you're also the face of the franchise. And it's a lot of pressure. So we'll see how Shador does, but that's the storyline I'm going to be watching tomorrow. As you know, I've got a little thing for Cam Scattaboo. I would love to see him wind up in Denver, but no matter where he ends up getting drafted, I'm going to follow him and pull for him because I like his story, his underdog story, the way he plays, how tough he is. And there are certain guys that they may not have the measurables, but they just love football and they're gamers and they know how to make plays. Jerry Rice wasn't exactly off the charts in his measurables, but yet he was always wide open because his attention to detail and his route running was amazing. All right, we'll keep things rolling. When we come back, Tracy Normoyle, her son Jake, now at Oregon State playing football. He went to West Lynn, played with Sam Levitt, who's now at Arizona State. She went through the entire recruiting process, and she's going to share her insight coming up next. Boston on top of Orlando, 50-47 with 2 seconds left in the first half. And the Cavaliers lead the Heat 26-24 second quarter in Cleveland. Warriors and Rockets will tip off at 6:30. Houston, a 3.5-point favorite in game 2. All right, appreciate your time. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing. All right, Rip City Drive. Hope you're enjoying your day. I'm very happy to welcome in studio a coworker, and I would consider her a pretty good friend now because we do some work together, and I enjoy her conversations. But most importantly, she's got a son right now who is at Oregon State, a new member of the football team, and they have gone through the entire recruiting process, and he just wrapped up his first spring game. It's my pleasure to welcome Tracy Normoyle into the studio, and I've been trying to figure out how to pronounce your last name. Did I nail it?
You did. You nailed it. Normoyle.
Because I think a lot of times when I look at it, I think normally or whatever,
Yes.
but I'm sure you get
we
that
always
sometimes.
say Norm from Cheers.
Yes.
And the oil you put in your car.
Norm
oil.
That's the best way to do it right there. I got it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm always looking for phonetic ways to pronounce names because I come across some sticky ones sometimes. But yeah, I'm pretty excited because I love talking about with you about football and this whole process that your son has gone through to find the proper place for him. But let's start with this. Oregon State just wrapped up their spring game. You were down there and had a chance to watch the game. But overall experience for your son, what did he communicate with you about the spring practice? And now that he's kind of getting used to his teammates and his coaches and stuff, how's the experience been so far?
Yeah, he had a great time, beautiful day, just an awesome Saturday at Reeser. He went down early, so graduated high school in January, early enrolled, and just finally kind of got to take reps and be with the team starting once he was enrolled on like mid-March. And so we had a great Saturday. He's one of 7 offensive linemen, maybe 8, that was active and available. So for, basically a high schooler who's barely there to be able to get a lot of reps, he had a great time.
Now, for a young guy entering major college football for the first time, how would you say his body compares to some of the older guys on the team who have been there working out, training, eating, and developing?
Yeah, he came off the field and said he needed to get stronger. And definitely you can tell it's like a little bit of a, boy among men because he's going against 24-year-olds that have been there and 4 or 5 years in. But, they have a great program to get him ready. And so he feels really like now is the time he has a great runway to do that.
So really, Tracy, that's good for him, right? Because you get on the field, you think, hey, I'm pretty good. And then you realize like, oh, I'm not where I need to be. I got a lot of work to do. That's good for him.
Yeah, great. And he's got great people around him to help him do it.
Now, he went to a good program in high school. Was it Westland?
Yep, Westland.
Yeah, good program. And he played on some good teams and had a lot of success during his time there.
He did. He was a state champion as a sophomore, played with Sam Levitt, who's at Arizona State, and several other great kids. Mark Hamper, who's in the portal right now. And then also as a senior was a state champion just last year.
Now, who were his coaches at Westland?
He has been very fortunate to have a host of former players. So Anthony Newman, John Eagle. I'm not sure he loved it, but my husband, his dad, and Alex Molden. So several.
Wow.
Damon Griffin. Like they have tons of former players, many of whom were Ducks.
Yes.
At Westland.
Did he understand the value of having those type of players with that type of experience around the program in the moment to realize how much they could help him?
I think he did as he aged in, but certainly, when you grow up and your dad played college football or you have family friends you maybe take it for granted. I mean, we live on the same street as Baron Naoni, who's also at Westland. He'll be playing for UW. His dad also played college football. So, we joke that, everybody's dad played college football. So I think he probably took it for granted.
Now, your husband is a Duck, right?
He is.
Did he play football at Oregon?
I'm a Duck, too. He did play football at Oregon 1994 through 1998 or 9.
Wow.
Back in the days.
What's it like for 2 Ducks to see their son take on the colors of Oregon State?
At first it was kind of odd.
Yeah.
But really through the recruiting journey, we had opportunity to be treated super well at University of Oregon. And obviously that's like home. But then also we loved our experience with the coaching staff at Oregon State. And my husband actually, said Oregon State felt a lot like how his experience had felt at University of Oregon. So just, different, but it's been great I have an OSU lanyard in my purse right now.
That's perfect. All right. So Jake's at Oregon State. How many schools reached out? How many was he considering through the recruiting process?
I probably don't know exactly how many schools, a variety, a lot of regional, kind of Washington, Oregon. But some Montana, a variety of different levels. What we found was that people moved a lot. So, one spring he was talking to 5 different offensive line coaches, and by the next fall, all 5 of them were at new universities.
Wow.
And so that, turnover of staff and contact definitely impacted who he was talking to and where they were.
And you even experienced that at Oregon State, right? With some change.
Yeah. 2-3 days after he arrived on campus, his coach left to go to the Chicago Bears. Kyle
Amazing.
DeVan.
How difficult was that for him?
You know what? He was surrounded. He was living with a group of O linemen, and he was not impacted negatively because we had experience from his recruiting at University of Oregon with Coach Kavanaugh. So it was, a great fit.
Yeah, Coach Kavanaugh. Now, with Coach DeVan, he's considered one of the best offensive line coaches in the country. He's well known. What I'm curious about in the recruiting process, let's take Oregon State, for example. Is the majority of the recruiting done by the position coach, Coach DeVan, in this situation? How much is the head coach involved? Like, what's the process like as you kind of work through that?
We had an area recruiter, so it changed during Jake's recruitment, but Coach Ford was the area recruiter, and so that would be when he was on site at the high school, so there was relationship building there. But then, a lot of it's done really by the position coach as well. So Coach DeVan, the reason that Jake, I think, ended up at Oregon State was in part because Coach DeVan was just very consistent and very accessible and personable. But in all of our experiences, the area recruiting coordinator, the position coach, and the head coach at some level was involved.
What did you learn, you and your husband, through the process now that Jake's entering college in a day and age that we've never seen before with NIL and freedom of movement? What jumped out at you, and what did you learn through that process about, what players can get, the NIL money, how prevalent is that, the discussions that are had? What was that process like?
Yeah, I mean, it varied by school, but I think for us, it was, pick the place you want to go over the people specifically, because we saw that the people were going to turn over. So love the college campus and the facilities, the support staff. So it was really like take a 360 view because there's just so much uncertainty about whether your coaches are going to turn over. And then each school handled it really differently, whether they were out loud about NIL or they weren't. Our kiddo, his personality was that he wanted to go to a place where he could develop and be with a group of people who might stay at the same place and play for a period of time. And so that wasn't, necessarily his top priority, but it was interesting to see how it impacted, the folks we were on recruiting trips with or the conversations.
So for your son, NIL money or the amount of dollars he could get from a school was not his top priority.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was definitely where will I be able to get on the field?
Yes,
and
or where
get
he can
reps
play and develop.
and play and get coaching.
I'm curious with your husband who played college football, was his advice the same? I mean, same type of thing, pick the place where you want to be, the campus, the surroundings.
Yeah.
Because if you're settled in and happy, then everything else will come from that.
And what brought Jake joy was playing football. So he wanted to get excellent coaching and excellent opportunity, but to get the chance to be playing football. And so I think that was where he prioritized his opportunity, was where he could see the field.
Yeah. And I would imagine, it's probably different for every athlete. Like some, maybe money is the top priority. For some, maybe playing time or the chance to develop is. I guess for some kids, it could be location, maybe being closer to family. Did you notice that, too, in terms of the priorities, in terms of what kids were looking for or families were looking for was different from kid to kid?
For sure. And, that's why in the end, even with being a Duck family, him deciding to go to Oregon State was because that was the best fit for him.
Yes.
So really not focusing on those outside forces and looking at where he would have the best opportunity to have a relationship with a coach who was going to put him in a place to be successful.
What type of NIL opportunities does your son have? Did they plug him into anything? Does he have opportunities to make some dollars outside of, off the football field?
Yeah, I think all college athletes today have that opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think each school handles it differently, but they have Oregon State has a really strong program where they're educating the athletes about how to be financially literate, how to be smart with their money, how to seek opportunity. But I wouldn't say that that's like their forefront specific topic that they're, it's sort of secondary to the football product.
How does Oregon State compare to maybe some of the bigger schools that are more NIL driven?
Really, NIL wasn't a topic of conversation. It wasn't in the sense that it wasn't what was our priority in the experience.
So you weren't pursuing that those specifics necessarily when you were meeting with coaches in the recruiting process. Well, Trent Bray, I met him for the first time at camp last year, and I had known him. Obviously, had been on staff for quite some time, but he came across very real, like down to earth. He was still trying to, I think, get a grasp on, going from position coach to a head coach. But I found him to be very charming in his own way. What was your experience with Trent Bray?
Yeah, we loved every opportunity we spent with Coach Bray. I think his delivery is that really what he wants to do is coach football. And so he was very humble, very accessible. I appreciated he has a in-home visit with every one of the athletes on his team. And so, he came to our house for dinner and it was completely comfortable. It was, not too big for the moment and, talked to Jake's younger brother. And so our experience with Coach Bray has been that he has been humble and communicated with our family and, reached out immediately with the change in coaching with Coach DeVan. So love him. We are huge Trent Bray fans.
What was his message about losing someone the quality of Coach DeVan?
I mean, I think he's a teammate of Coach DeVan's, and so he was a person first and thought it was a great opportunity for Coach DeVan and his family. And there was no change. I mean, Coach Kavanaugh is offensive line coaching legacy, royalty. So there was no concern in the caliber of coaching for Jake. So he was happy for Coach DeVan and ready to plug someone in who's going to be turnkey for the program.
We're talking about Tracy Normoyle here on the Rip City Drive. Her son Jake's at Oregon State. She just went through the recruiting process, and he wrapped up his first spring at the spring game just a couple of weeks ago. So I'm curious with parents who may have athletes in high school right now, juniors, seniors, and they're starting to look at their colleges and go through the entire recruiting process. Like, what are some suggestions you might give in terms of your experience and what you went through about maybe the right questions to ask or what to look for as you look back with that experience?
Sure. I would say start earlier than you think because it was really sophomore, junior year. I think with the transfer portal and so much change happening, the way that the coaches make up their recruiting classes. So it was really sophomore year was more important than we had thought it would be. I would say know the NCAA eligibility calendar and contact periods because there's times of the year where coaches can't talk to your son. I would prioritize camps over like junior days or game day visits because really at the end of the day, it's about what's put on film and metrics and some intangible things might factor in, but it really comes down to them watching you play the game. So I found going for a junior day visit was fun, but they still then wanted you to come back for a camp. So if you're factoring travel in, right, like 2 trips to Montana or 2 trips to California, go to the camp.
No, will you travel to all the games to watch your son play this upcoming season? How are you going to handle that?
I think his goal is to make the travel squad, so that'll be the first hurdle. And
awesome.
And then I imagine that we'll want to go wherever we can to watch him play and prioritize those places in the sun.
Now, does your son have any impressions? The Beavers got a big-time quarterback, Malik Murphy, in the transfer portal. Did your son give any takes on what he's seen from him?
Yeah.
Impressive, or what did he say?
Well, his first thing was he was excited and bummed because Malik took the entire offensive line out to a really nice dinner.
Yes.
But Jake didn't get to go because he came back to get his state championship ring at Westland High. So he was
tough choice
for a kiddo. But so he said he's been great and been very personable, and ironically, their lockers are really close to each other.
What's it like as a mom to watch your son out there in such a physical game like football? Do you get nervous, or you're used to it because you grew up around it with your husband and stuff? But what's it like watching your son play?
Yeah, I've watched football completely differently now. I watch his position and then find the ball. So
yes.
I'm a little delayed on what's really happening on the field.
So you watch offensive line, the battle up front first before you watch where the ball's at.
Yeah, I did not used to, but as the mom of a kiddo out there, yes, I watched
But
to make sure he
you're
was
learning
okay
more about the
first.
game now.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I used to say I just prayed the whole time.
Yes.
But, I trust his training and, so I've learned to watch it a little bit differently. But, I'm just super proud of him and excited for his future.
Well, it's got to be exciting to see. Are you happy? Are you pleased with your son's process? I know what you and your husband encouraged him to do through the recruiting process, but it sounds like he was able to kind of pick the spot, the school that worked best for him. Are you happy with his process in terms of picking the spot and thinking about things and asking the right questions? Do you feel like he learned something through that process?
I do, and I think that was evidenced when the coach he had been through his entire recruiting process left a few days in, where he didn't miss a beat because he knew he had picked the kind of people and the kind of culture and, Coach Bray and the location. So I think he learned a lot about himself too. He had to drive it, right? You have to be willing to do a lot of work and make a lot of sacrifices in order to get this opportunity. And so he learned a lot about sacrifice and about work ethic and about being in the gym and so and now he's off doing it as himself.
Now, aside from your son, I would imagine it's kind of fun for you. You see these other kids at Westland, like Sam Levitt, for example. He's one of my favorite players in college football, and he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country this upcoming season. How cool is that to see other kids that played at Westland, that play with your son, to go on to become bigger and better things in college football?
Yeah, I think we're really fortunate to have an awesome community and a great program. And then, I know Sam and Mark are coming back to do a camp I think next week, actually, at Westland to give back to the community. So it's fun because a lot of these kids grew up from kindergarten all the way through high school.
Oh,
in
they've
the
known
same
each other
place.
for a long
Known
time.
Each other. So they, played on 9U baseball teams together. And so it's fun. We're going to be down watching one of his buddies play baseball at Oregon. So there's lots of them going in lots of different places.
Well, what's cool for me is when I listen to some of these young, athletes, men and young women and young men communicate, it gives me hope for the future because there's some of our best and brightest who are competing and going to school and still being students and putting their best effort out there. I like to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I would say that is one thing, too, that I would want to impart to other parents is one thing we heard over and over on the recruiting trail was your GPA and your grades matter, and they can't even talk to you if you aren't at a certain grade point average, and especially like regional schools who want to take advantage of the WUI, which is kind of a reciprocal tuition process. You have to have, like a 3.5 at least GPA. And so making sure that your kiddos stay in school and are doing well in classes. I know Jake had to take, Jake took summer school in order to be able to enroll early. So planning ahead to have the credits you need to graduate and have a grade point average that puts you in the conversation.
How difficult is school, keeping up on your studies during the course of the season? And what have you been told about that? And what type of support do they give to the kids? Because they're working out in the film room, studying, practicing, doing all that stuff. That's a lot of load for a youngster.
I think we're only a few weeks into it, so we're learning, but, it's an embarrassment of riches than the resources. Jake has an advisor that is meeting with him to talk to him about, what assignments are due and what the due timing is and what his upcoming load will be. And so goes to class, and then has a full staff of people willing to help support how to get him through. So far, he's had tons of support.
How many boys do you have in the house?
Well, there's 2 kids, our dog and my husband. So,
yes. So you got, I would imagine Jake, the food bill pretty high when you got football players,
yes,
right?
we are experiencing a dramatic decline in our grocery bill for sure now that he's gone.
That's good. But they also help with his access to the training table. Like they'll help him with caloric intake, like nutrition for position, right? So if he needs to put on weight and continue to bulk up, I've seen the facilities down there. They've really improved him significantly. It's beautiful. But it's nice to know that you get proper instruction on how to get your body where it needs to be able to play at the level that you're hoping to play at, which is cool.
Yeah, we had a parent meeting before the spring game. Coach Bray had a parent meeting and, talked about this next few months and what the calendar looks like. And each player gets to meet with their position coach and then the head coach. And I would say half of the parent meeting was about strength, conditioning, and then nutrition. And the nutritionist that is designing plans for whether it's weight gain or weight loss or muscle build, So it was super impressive to hear, they're going on grocery store trips together to teach him how to grocery shop appropriately for their goals. They're talking about more green on their plate. It doesn't matter that mom's been saying it forever. It's the nutritionist. They
Good.
have a full service opportunity to get better on all little parts of their lives.
That's terrific. We're talking with Tracy Normoyle on the Rip City Drive. Her son Jake's at Oregon State. She just went through the recruiting process. I'm curious because I've heard that Oregon, and we know this, they're cutting edge in so many different ways, the Ducks and how they operate. As a former Duck, what was your impression on their recruiting process and how buttoned up they were? What were your impressions of Oregon?
It was amazing. Their facilities are unbelievable. It was beautifully executed. There was the weight room, the everything they had was top of.
So it's noticeable instantly.
It's amazing. It's amazing facilities, just buttoned up, detailed. Really, we always kind of joked it was like bright and shiny.
Yeah.
It was so like there was a million light bulbs going off everywhere all of the time. So it was impressive.
Your husband played at a time when really at the beginning of that was the
Maybe
foundation.
Before the beginning, yeah.
Yes, that was the foundation being laid for what we see now. How proud is your husband to see? Is he blown away to see where Oregon football is at today compared to when he was playing at the school?
Yeah, but I think what was amazing during our recruiting process was how great they still treated the former athletes and the guys. They're still
showing respect to your husband and everyone else.
The same equipment guys are there. Some of the same doctors are there.
That's awesome.
Some of the same strength and conditioning coaches are still there. So it was still at its core what we remembered. It's just at a very bigger, much bigger level now.
Well, I would imagine for you personally, I know how difficult it was when I moved out of the house. My mom was very sad, but it's got to be nice to know that Jake, while he's away, he's not far away, right? You can reach him in 90 minutes.
Yeah, he's been great and indulged his mom, but also he's happy. And so, I'm less worried because he's down there having a ball and meeting great people. And the people we've met that are down there have been the kind of people that you want your kid around. So
how challenging is it for you not to be like too aggressive in your, because I know how my mom is. Like my dad told me great advice when I was younger. He said, look, your mom is always going to be your mom. And the sooner you understand that and embrace it, the easier life's going to be. And he was right, because my mom's always going to interject because she's my mom. But for you, now that your son's out, like, how do you find that balance of not going overboard, but yet allowing him to grow as a young man?
Yeah, I have had to rein it in, but I also am grateful for texts.
Yeah.
He talks to his dad because they're talking about football, right? So they were getting a lot more communication, and I wanted to make sure, that he was paying his parking ticket and making sure that, the sheets fit on the bed and all of the mom questions. So he FaceTimed me and let me ask all my mom questions.
Yes.
And he's patient with me. But I want him to go fly and have fun, and he is. So I'm glad he's not too far away.
Well, Tracy, I know that I appreciate you coming in. Like a lot of people who don't do radio every day, I know you were a little bit nervous because you didn't think you'd have a lot of good things to say. So I'm going to ask you now that it's over, how hard was that?
Not so bad.
We just had conversation.
Yeah, it's not so bad. I'd come back.
Well, I tell you what, I have a great deal of respect for you. I enjoy, it's and you know how this is because you've worked for a long time, but it's nice when you encounter coworkers that you enjoy just being around, and you're awesome. So I'm very happy for you and your husband, and I'm excited to watch Jake. Now I've got a personal connection to the Beaver program, so I'm going to be I'm excited to see what Jake will become, which is cool.
Well, I always appreciate you indulging me with my mom topics and bringing up to speed on all the random stuff I learned.
Well, and I can ask you too, because you give me the intel on Sam Levitt, and the more you tell me about him, I'm like, oh, not only is he a great quarterback, but he's a cool dude.
So great. He and the Hampers their families are awesome, and nothing but happy for them.
How much is Sam loving Arizona State?
I don't actually keep in touch a ton with Sam, so Jake would probably have to answer that question, but I know we keep in touch with the Hamper family.
Oh, good.
Do
you have any idea where Hamper's going to wind up?
I selfishly hope he ends up with Sam.
Yeah.
It'd be super fun to watch that.
Yeah, go to Arizona State and be down there with the Sun Devils. Well, Tracy Normoyle here on the Rip City Drive. Tracy, thank you for sharing the input, and good luck to you and your family and your son as he embarks on his journey.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Trace. Enjoyed that. Nice work. All right, we'll come back. Rip City Drive with Chad doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, I'm going to kick it to Rich Burke and Matt Rickard here in just a couple of minutes as the Hillsboro Hops get ready to take on the Tri-City Dust Devils. That's coming up here in a couple of moments. Right now, checking the NBA scoreboard with the 2 playoff games that are in action right now. The Boston Celtics have a 74-64 lead on the Orlando Magic with 2:22 to play in the third quarter there in Boston. That game on TNT. On NBA TV, it's halftime in Cleveland. The Cavaliers in front of the Heat by a score of 68-51. And then the game I'm looking forward to coming up from the Toyota Center in Houston, 6:30 tip on TNT, the Warriors and Rockets. Houston favored by 4.5 as they look to even up that series heading back to San Francisco. And then coming up tomorrow on NFL Draft Night, 3 games. Knicks at the Pistons at 4. That's going to be awesome. At 6:30, Thunder at the Grizzlies. Both those games are on TNT and on NBA TV at 7 o'clock. The Nuggets at the Clippers. Game 3, that will be at Intuit Dome in Los Angeles. So there you have it. Can't believe they're putting the Nuggets and Clippers on NBA TV. But what are you going to do? And they're putting the Thunder and Grizzlies on TNT. Why? Why would you do that? We know who's going to win that game. The Thunder right now, a machine. And through 2 games, I understand they're playing the Grizzlies, but I just think the Thunder, light years ahead of the rest of the Western Conference. It's too bad we got to wait, though. I think Friday's the day where we're going to get the Lakers and Timberwolves. The 2 series that I have the most interest in, Lakers-Wolves, Rockets-Warriors, but the Knicks and Pistons also really good. And then we'll see if Milwaukee can bounce back going back home. But Boston right now on top by 13, and the Cavs up by 17 at halftime over the Heat. And then tomorrow we're going to focus in on the NFL draft. Looking forward to it. Where is Shedeur going to wind up? How high is Ashton Genty going to go in the draft? And are the Cowboys going to make any big moves? Because according to Jerry Jones, they are focused on that. All right, big thanks to our guests today. Sean Hyken for joining me in studio for an hour. And to Tracy Normoyle, who talked about the whole recruitment process. Her son now at Oregon State.